What's up, folks? I guess I had to ask anybody out there that's married or in a relationship, what would you do if you came to the realization that the person that you're married to is more than likely trying to lead you into a life and death circumstance, which for most people may be outside of their ability to fathom, um, outside of the norm. If you stumbled upon life insurance policies and that person kept trying to strategically lead you closer and closer to the lion's mouth and put your face right next to the lion's mouth, how would you translate that as a spouse? And it, for me at least, was one of the hardest things to grasp, because you love somebody with all that you are. When you find them and you build everything with them and you dedicate your entire existence and you're willing to give your life for them and for your family to protect them or otherwise, and you have to accept the reality of the betrayal of what they're doing. Despite their denial, you have to look at the reality of their actions as opposed to the words that come out of their mouth, especially when they lie. But how do you react to that as a spouse? For sure, you got to cut it short. And that's going to be the question that I'm going to have to bring forward, and that I've been alluding to, as to how this travesty that I'm dealing with here in Napa County, um, the reality of it is that's exactly what was happening. I was married to somebody else, and that person had a family member, their father, who was moonlighting, was a restaurant owner, but was moonlighting doing something else. And that activity led to his kidnapping and murder, and eventually the displacement of his family for their own safety, etc. And that's a reality that I have to contend with, and who those people are and where they're at. And seeing my spouse disregard that, and knowing early on into our connection that she was tethered to the very same people, and then moving to Napa and her establishing new relationships with the people that may think they're on, or they may be on something adjacent but not quite the same. Meaning, like, look, there's cartel, there's mafia, there's gangs, there's different levels and different groups and different echelons within each one of those. But at times it's just a mindset, and those people may be connected to a different kind of murderer, a different kind of butcher, than like a cartel group, as opposed to, a gang or a mafia or organized crime of any kind. But moving away from an area of chaos to something like this, where it's peaceful and serene and beautiful for the most, not to say it doesn't have its own problems, connections with people that are just like the people that you're trying to move your family away from, perhaps because they have similar addictions or problems, and you need them to validate your own behavior because their behavior is questionable and chaotic. And it's like, so rather than them holding themselves accountable and holding you accountable, they're going to be justifying your actions, you're going to be justifying theirs, and then there's no growth, at least behind closed doors or underneath the surface. Because people are really good at putting up facades. Social media, people go to work, it's one thing, and that's understandable. When we go to our kids' school, we're try to be on our best behavior. If we're at work, we're going to try to be on our best behavior. So you don't always know how those people act outside of that unless you hang out with them outside of that scope. And so at times people will say, oh no, this person's wonderful and great, based on only what they know and they see, but they don't really think that, well, in actuality, I don't really spend a lot of time with this person outside of this arena where were mandated by whatever, what's the, employee obligation or business owner obligation or what have you, whatever the reason is that people put on that different behavior when they're around other people, professional or otherwise. If people don't see who you are when you're not putting out that facade, then how can they truly judge your character or be a judge of your character? And that's what I've dipped into right here in Napa. Is that's a huge obstacle. Right when you get there and you try to go get help and you're like, hey, I'm not perfect, we're not perfect, but there's a history, there's danger, and we need help. Can you help us? And the first barrier is like disbelief. Like, what do you mean? This person's phenomenal, like exceptional, and what is all this stuff? This cannot be so. And then that person, that narcissist, more than likely will try to utilize only what those people have seen, and they'll try to, create disbelief or discredit the person who's trying to help them, even if that person is the one that really loves them. They're going to tether themselves to the people who say they love them, but their actions are chaotic and destructive only because those people also are like supporting the negative behavior, as opposed to saying, no, we can do better. Because even if you're screwing up, you can say, hey, I can do better, we can do better, and not advocate or validate somebody's negative behavior. So what I'm up against and who I'm up against right here, it's a nightmare. But I'm steadfast, and it's gonna be it's a painful experience, man. It's a gut-wrenching, painful experience, and things spiraled out of control, and the end result is a question mark for sure. I mean, X factor. But it really sucks that people. I'm gonna put some more videos out on that. Like, I'm gonna go to Vichy Elementary School and show you guys where and what happened. And when I talk about the pesticides, even though that's a different issue than the whole, marital chaos, they happen at the same place, so I could do 2 videos. But when people say thank you for your service and all that, and that's awesome, but then some of the same people or other folks will then try to weaponize that against some of these people, and then that same person that people will weaponize service or hardship, the stack as I call it, they'll weaponize that against the individual unless they need them. When things get chaotic, they turn to that person and like, do something, like, wait, because those people have a hole in them at times that needs to be filled, and usually sometimes it's filled by that feeling they get by going and doing for others what was not done for them. And so they will charge head on towards danger and disregard their own safety. And people want that in these chaotic situations. But then when the dust clears and there's something that they want or need, they can and have weaponized the suffrage of the individual. The same hurt and pain that makes that individual selfless and go face danger on behalf of everybody else will be used as a weapon. And it's abhorrent to see. So we're going to get into some of the stories about what happened in Fort Carson, Colorado. There was a massacre by those men that deployed with my brother. My brother is no longer with us, but there was newspaper reports. They interviewed him, so I'll be citing his words and give as best explanation as I can. Touch on the chaos that I'm dealing with the murders involved with my first wife's father and other people that I knew, and the incident that took place here in Napa at the Yountville Veterans Home, speaking with other veterans, touching on the unfortunate suicide of a fellow Ramrod, and the details surrounding that, and his struggle with PTSD. I'd like to dip into Captain Nate Self and his description of the 2 wars, which really is a great description of what people who are traumatized go through. They go through the trauma first, and then they go through that's their war. Then they go through another war of trying to overcome the hardship that's imposed by that trauma. Um, and there's two different kinds, I guess, from what I've been told. And a lot of it, when people go into trauma therapy, they're just trying to make sure the person feels safe and convince them that there's no danger. Um, which is ideal, so that they can digress and feel at peace and be in the moment. But if you're in a circumstance where the danger still exists, like for example, if a soldier came back from deployment and went through all this therapy and treatment and everything, but then moved to the place where they were in combat of any kind, or the danger is real, it's like there's no way they're going to be just like, you know, because it's a real danger. And that's where some therapists will have a near impassable mountain to climb, because how can you make somebody feel safe when the danger is still there? It's still real. And for a lot of these folks that deal with post-traumatic stress, and I'm not just talking about from military action, there's people who may have had a home invasion, they were a victim of a crime, they could be in law enforcement where they had to do something terrible, or could have been in a car accident even, and see their spouse die right next to them, like just not far behind me up the road here. Well, both those people passed away, but if you're in that circumstance where it's like you see your spouse getting eaten by an animal or something, a bear or whatever, yeah, so there's a myriad of tragedy that would definitely traumatize people. And it's important to, even though they're different, dealing with the trauma, they'll probably have to go through a lot of the same steps. And so I know a lot of people are not going to be, once it gets to that point, a lot of people aren't going to be able to understand the underlying truth of the chaos that I have to deal with here in this circumstance. I don't know, there might be like 350 million people in this country, and I don't even think less than 1% of 1% has done some of the things that I've done relative to this terrible chaos. And I don't know if peace or peace of mind is a reality at this point anymore, but I've been staying nonviolent, and despite that, they tried to use all this other against me when I have the same level of training as the individual who lost his battle, but I'm not doing that. I've done everything by the proper channels, the proper means, despite the fact that I'm facing pending violence or chaos. Ironically, we're the kind of people that would die for other people. And when people that you would willingly sacrifice yourself so that they could continue forward are just too comfortable placing you in harm's way, it magnifies the hurt and the pain that you feel. But the weaponization of everything, and then the individuals that are doing it, they see themselves as victims, and anybody else that tries to express their pain or their position and validate their premise, they'll try to flip it and say, oh, this person's victimizing or identifying themselves as a victim when they're not, which it's bizarre. It's like the pot calling the kettle black. They're waggling their fingers at individuals from on top of a soapbox. But the more alone I am and the more I suffer through this, the closer and closer I come to just making the entire truth known. I've been bottle feeding and just gradually trying to just maintain and be good. But I assure you, I pop just like that. These other people have popped, but I pop non-violently because I have a son, and he needs me, and I have a responsibility to him. So that's one of the things I'd love to dip into. It's like, yo, what was it? Because I have people that have been through the same circumstance and they haven't popped. They still navigate through it. And I'm not saying they're any better or stronger or anything, because I genuinely feel that some people show up to trauma already having trauma. That's what I mean about the stack. And it's important to identify whatever pre-existing trauma may have exacerbated this. What else was there? And when you start to dip into it, a lot of these people had a stack. They have a high ACER score before they step into it. It might be missed, it might be passed over, but it's important. That's the reason why I think they came up with the whole ACEs score, because they started to do the math and they started realizing that when people have all those check boxes, or the more check boxes they have, the more at risk they are of things like substance abuse or mental health or going left. I'm really fortunate. Ironically, I'm not fortunate to have gone through so much, but I'm really fortunate that I did go through all these different things like that program and our family and cognitive intervention, because I do have those tools in my toolbox. And although I may not have needed them as much younger in life, because my trauma started so young, far back, I may not have needed them then, but I was able to utilize them later on in life, and even the here and now. So yeah, I'm passionate about a lot of this. I've lost a lot of people, a lot, and I've experienced everything from murder, attempted murder, kidnapping, people that I love being killed in car accidents, substance abuse. I've weathered many storms and experienced many things in my life that just one of those things could have broken many people. And the burden is heavy. I will not lie. There's some times where you're Atlas there holding the world up. And I keep my son's picture, and he is the light that shines in a dark room. But it does put you to the test. So I'm here as a form of catharsis. I don't lie. I will not lie, even if it's not conducive to me. And I'm holding back and I'm restraining myself, but I keep being marched closer and closer to just opening Pandora's box all the way. Because what is being done here, no matter what the respondent and all these other shady people that have these sworn responsibilities and mission statements and everything that they're deviating from for their own personal interests or the interest of whatever agencies or that they represent, that's not in the best interest of my child. And that is maybe that's the reason why I suffered, to have this strength to still be willing to press forward and ask for accountability. It's weird because the people that I use if I'm going into these arena and then these people discharge these questionable actions that make no sense, and then you go places and you ask questions and you're told this is what you need to do to seek recourse, you go do that, and they still complain as if this is an attack, or it's like, what? I mean, if you do something wrong and you represent something that you're supposed to do, when somebody seeks to hold you accountable, especially when you're infringing upon their rights and their life, which is the most intimate thing, I would think. There's nothing above life, time in life, because if you take somebody's time, you're taking their life in part. But when you want to lean on that, put people in harm's way, Like, you have to expect that they're going to want to say no. And if you're going to utilize your positions collectively or individually, then it's not an attack if people are utilizing the very things that are put in place to protect them, or that they can use to seek recourse when their rights have been abridged. So, but that's the game. That's the game they play. It's like they're gonna. I've through this process, I've gone through it multiple times, whether it was the opposing attorney or whatever. Anytime you seek action to hold them accountable, they'll automatically flip it over that they're the victim and everything. I will not be pushed off center for that or for anything else that I'm passionate about, and especially not the safety of my son or his future or the influence and these chaotic characters and the county people that are supposed to protect my child and talk about what's in the best interest of my son, but are setting that aside to accommodate somebody just because of the title they have or what they feel maybe bad optics. I don't know. It's not my place to say, but it is my place to stand and fight for my rights and to protect my son. And I'm relentless. So if they come here, if they try to shut me down, or if they go here or there, I mean, I'll go old school and print out leaflets. Like I said, I'll go drive across the country all the way to the nation's capital, and I'll stop in every state, and every person I can talk to along the way, I'll utilize other people's platforms. People that I've met that have came here, I'll utilize their platforms. I've already stacked it and I have it ready. I have it ready to rock. And that's where I'm at right now, is like, how far are they going to press me? Because that's where the end result. It's not going to be me going and committing violence. It's going to be me exposing the whole truth and make sure everybody knows it. So when they look at what's gone on here and they see these people, they see them for who they really are and what they're really capable of. Not the facade, not the what's in the best interest of the child bullshit, because that's a generic statement. And let's face it, a lot of times what's done is not in the best interest of the child. It's because of money, or because somebody has a friend that knows this person, or they may have a title, and that should never supersede the safety of anybody's kid or their future.